Hi, this is Steve Wraith, and thanks for listening to the Steve Wraith interviews. This interview was recorded during 2020's lockdown period and was part of a special series. Oh, Lisa.
Hi, Steve.
How are you, mate? You okay?
Aye, not bad.
Joy, the bonnet's coming on, lad.
I'm not sure what to do. I'm undecided whether I go back and go for another number 1 or 2 or let it grow again back into the quiff.
Hey, I think that's got to be one of the longest hairs I've seen on you for a while, lad. It's coming on, like, really coming on.
It is.
How can I do that? How can I do that? I'm just jealous. Right, let's get started. I want to start with League Two before we start talking about Newcastle, because they made a decision. Obviously, the club's voted. What's your take on that? They've agreed that the season's no longer going to go ahead. They're going to promote the teams, but they're going to have the playoffs, but there's going to be no relegation. So what do you make of all of that?
Well, first of all, I think they've come to the decision, Steve, because ultimately they cannot financially go ahead with the season. You know, the clubs and the situation that they're under and the financial pressures, especially when they furloughed their players and they've got no income. You know, these clubs live by their match day income, their ticket sales or whatever. That's, you know, they live month to month. It's not like the Premier League where they've got lots of outstanding monies in the bank. So I understand the reasons. And, you know, the teams are in automatic promotion places. They've gone up or going up. That's what they're proving. And the teams in the playoffs, they're going to have to play in the playoffs. But I seen the Cheltenham manager this morning speaking and saying his club still need a bit of help, even though they're going to be playing in the playoffs, because financially they haven't got big budget. They don't operate with a lot of finance. So for them to put on games, which is ultimately going to cost them money, they need a little bit of help. And the thing with Stevenage, who are bottom of the table, not going down, it still could be good news for Barrow to get promoted from the National League, because obviously they lost Bury from League Two when they, you know, went out of business. So they still need to replace them. So they still hope that Barrow would get promoted and go into the Football League. So that could be a good thing. You know, the implications for the lower league team, Steve, is huge. And it's really sad, but I think when we get back to normality, whenever there is, you will see some clubs follow, unfortunately, the old clubs lead in terms of Bury going out of business. And I think that's what's going to happen, because I think this epidemic's hitting so many businesses hard. Football's not going to be immune to it, especially lower league teams, where I said they work from month to month. Some even work from week to week, you know. I've known it's some of the clubs I've been at, if there hasn't been a home game for a couple of weeks for whatever reason, they struggle to pay the salaries on time, you know, because obviously they haven't got any game money coming through or whatever. So that shows you the reality, what you're dealing with down at those levels of the game.
Yeah, Bono has just made that point. Did we think that Barrow would take Bury's place? I think that would be right. I could see that happening, no problem. So obviously we're a bit further forward with the Premier League. They've come out now and you know, they've had another meeting. They've had more meetings than probably they've had in the entire year over this. But they've got to get it right. It looks like we're back into training on Monday, or some sort of training for most teams, and then the date of the Premier League coming back's been put back from the 12th. It looks likely to be the 19th of June now. So we've made some progress, but we haven't made a whole load of progress, have we?
No, we haven't, and it's quite difficult. You know, you have a lot of sympathy for the people who are having to make these major decisions, because one, it's not something they've had to deal with before, so there's no example to go from and how we've done it in the past. This is something new for everybody in every walk of life. And obviously, too, it's the money that is bandied about and is on for Premier League teams means that it's just an absolute tough call. I mean, I've obviously just started watching the Bundesliga getting up and running again. You know, Borussia Dortmund, Schalke are there on TV at the moment. So it's a weird scenario, not having any fans in a top flight game in a high profile league like that. You know. The players look like that, you know, that they're trying to be as professional as possible. What for me, Steve, is, you know, you've mentioned June the 19th there. So if you think back, was I working it out? Newcastle's last game against Southampton, was that about March, middle of March or something?
6 weeks ago, I think, was the last Premier League game.
Right, well, that's probably equivalent to what the players, or probably longer, if anything, to what the players have offered pre-season. You know, at the end of the season. And then what they do is they gradually work up their fitness levels, get the group back into football fitness sessions, have friendlies. But you're not going to have that type of amount of time. You're not going to have those opportunities to have friendlies. So are the players going to be at that peak fitness? I've got no doubt they've been sticking to the programs they've been given, but fitness and training programs compared to football fitness and doing football training sessions are completely different, and playing in game situations. So I just think it's there's so many facets of it that could be, you know, not at the same level as it used to be. Obviously, there's no fans in there. You know, you've got 300-400 people, which are going to be medical people, backroom staff, officials, whatever. So it's just so many questions. You know, there's obviously players who aren't feeling comfortable about going back, and they've come out already. You know, 3 or 4 of them have come out and said they don't really particularly feel comfortable. You say the earmark to come back into training Monday. Well, that probably won't be full contact. It'll probably be in 2s and 3s, I would have thought, at most. So you're just doing individual type training, technical training with those individuals. So there's no type of team training getting done. When can that be allowed to be done? Obviously, with Newcastle, we've got a player who's been very outspoken about it, and Danny Rose, to say that, you know, he's not worried about the mood of the nation making, like, what he meant it was, he didn't mean that he wasn't concerned about the nation. The feedback was that football was going to help the nation, you know, feel good about itself again. And what Danny was saying, he didn't want to be in that position. You know, it's like everyone else, it's the social distancing. There's been some crazy stuff. I mean, I seen someone made a quote the other day about saying, when you go in for a tackle, face the other way and stuff like that. I just thought that was crazy.
Marcelino could have done that.
I was going to say, I've known some players, and I've played with some players who faced the other way when they went in for a tackle, mate. So that wouldn't be a change.
Good stuff. Scooby Ray says, what do you think about the Saudis investing in Facebook and Disney? And there's been nothing said about that. Whereas, you know, the investment obviously in Newcastle has been splashed all over the papers. It's probably because it's because we're such a passionate fan base, isn't it? And like I had this discussion with a Geordie dentist the other night. It's because we react to everything as a fan base, and that's perfect for the media and perfect for all of these, you know, websites and that and social media accounts, because somebody comes out and says something controversial about Newcastle, we all bite like piranha fish. Do you know what I mean? And there's such a need for knowledge. That's probably why there's been, you know, so much interest in this takeover, even though there's been not a great deal to say, because we all know it's a Premier League checks, and we're just waiting for them to come out and say that there's no issues.
Absolutely, Steve. I think it's me and you have mentioned this many times. It's been a good time and a bad time, really, for the takeover to happen, because or potentially be happening, because obviously the Premier League have got so many other issues going on that they need to resolve. You know, with due respect to Newcastle, and it's our club, and we want to see that the takeover happen. It's probably not in the top 5 priorities at the moment, the people in the Premier League, to pass this takeover. You know, they've got so much other stuff, really top stuff, that could make or break, you know, the Premier League this season, the integrity of the competition. You know, whatever decision they make, is it going to give them legal issues with other clubs? They've got all that to think about. And then obviously they might consider, oh, can we ratify this Newcastle United takeover? For me, I think when you mention the Saudis taking up Disney and other companies like that, no issues being involved there, I can only see, and this is me just going from the media, this isn't me having any inside information at all, is this piracy scenario with the Premier League football. I think, to me, that looks like the only hold up now. That looks like that they're having to investigate this really strongly, because by all accounts, they've written to all the Premier League clubs, the beIN Sports CEO, to say that this is wrong, that it should be passed, because the Saudis have been one of the main uses of piracy for the Premier League. Now, as I said to you the first couple of weeks we talked about this, not stuff I really know anything about, not stuff I've got any clear information on.
I've done some research into it, Lee, and spoken to a few people from Saudi who live out there, and this was all sorted a year ago, so it's actually a non-event. You know, especially the company name that we've heard of, the BQ link, it doesn't affect it because it was killed off a year ago. So it's actually not really anything that would take a great deal of investigating, because it's well publicised that the Saudis have nothing to do with that. So, you know, after we spoke, I made a point of actually speaking to different people out there, and that's the case. So I would say my gut feeling now is that they're just making sure that they're dotting the I's, they're crossing the T's, and they're making sure that there's nothing comes back and bites them on the backside, you know. And you've nailed it as well. There's a lot more to be sorted out before Newcastle United's takeover, and that's getting the Premier League back underway in whatever shape or form, and also making sure that they don't have any legal issues with that either. Because if they concentrate on getting Newcastle takeover sorted and miss something vital with the kickstart of the Premier League again, you know, the lawyers at the Premier League will be working overtime at the minute, you know, trying to get this sorted out, because they'll be looking at every nook and cranny and saying, well, if we don't do it this way, then they'll sue us. And if they don't do it if we do it that way, they'll sue us. So I suppose you're right. That's the main focus. And I think we're here in due course.
I totally agree, Steve. I think things will move much quicker for Newcastle United's takeover and proposed takeover once all the other issues of the Premier League have been sorted. One, when do the clubs get back into training? Is a group safely? Two, is there a definite start date for the Premier League to resume? Three, you know, how they're going to work if they can it. If the worst case scenario happens and it doesn't resume, how they're going to decide? Obviously, they've got do they give Liverpool the title? How they're deciding the bottom three? If any teams are getting relegated, even if they do play, because it's obviously is it going to be at neutral venues, or they're still going to play home and away games? Because obviously there's clubs who are for the playing on the neutral venues, but obviously a lot of the teams down the bottom, they, even though they're not going to have the crowd, they want the home and away scenario, because they still want to have those important home games where they can pick up points so they don't get relegated. Even though, you know, you're not going to have your home fans, you've got your home comforts, i.e. your own dressing room, and you know that you're used to the pitch, etc., and all those type of things. So I've always had this feeling that, even though there's little doubts come in now and then, I've always had this feeling. I think it's low on the priority list at the moment in time with the Premier League, and when the other things get sorted, I think you'll see the Newcastle stuff get organised very quickly after that.
Yeah, we've got loads of questions coming in, Lee, so we'll try and answer a few of them. Paul Oxley's first. He says, do you think they should have crowd noise played over the tannoy for these behind the closed doors games? Do you think it's a good idea?
Not me personally, because I can, you know, it's false, don't you? When you're playing there, you know it's not the same. There's not that raw emotion. I mean, how can you play something, you know, when there's a goal line clearance, or there's someone clean through on goal, the ex-mate, and I mean, how do you change it? Do you know what I mean?
You can have a right laugh with it, though.
Oh, you could be clean through on goal. You could have the opposition clean through on goal and start the boos going through or whatever. It could be absolutely mental.
Classic. Sean Vose says, Clark is a legend. I remember bumping into Watson, Thompson and Clark in the Ritzy a few times. God, I miss double denim. Black Diamond says, Steve, can you ask Lee what's next for him? Is it management role? Is it a boardroom role, or a youth role, or something different altogether?
I don't know, really. It'd be difficult to be a youth role. I've never seen myself in that sort of position. I like to work with the senior players. That's what I've done all my career. I enjoy watching the young players. Got a lot of faith in them, and when I've been a manager, loved giving the opportunity to young players. But who knows? I don't know, management or director of football position, or just an advisory role. Or it depends, Steve. It's got to be the right project. There's been some tough jobs that I've took on, and proved a little bit more difficult than I expected, and I don't want them kind of scenarios anymore. It's enjoy the management side, enjoy the games, enjoy seeing the players develop. So if those opportunities arise, I would certainly consider them.
That question was from Martin Spate, by the way. He just told us to tell you.
Yes, Martin.
Everybody's asking as well what you're drinking, but it's obvious you're drinking the rosé, mate, again, isn't it?
Yes, and it's proper value for money. It's Sainsbury's own make, house Pinot Grigio blush, and it's only £4.50 a bottle. So get yourselves down to Sainsbury's and get that. It's top quality. You have this type of quality in a restaurant, you'd be talking 50, 60 quid a bottle. So get yourself down to Sainsbury's, anyone, and it's the house Pinot Grigio blush, £4.50 a bottle.
Quality, that's on quality. Dortmund have obviously taken a 2-0 lead, but Aaron Hughes has scored for Newcastle against Sheffield Wednesday. We've just been told, so that's good news. Newcastle's 1-0 up. Alan Shearer has obviously yet to score, but I'm sure he'll get a few goals in that game today.
I was at that game and remember going back to St James's to watch it. What a phenomenal day that was. I mean, what a result. I mean, just everything they hit went in the net. It was what a way to start off, the late, great Sir Bobby's reign. Fantastic man, fantastic manager. And, that was just the sign of things to come under his managementship.
Yeah. Steve Peacock says, how's Bobby doing? That's your son, of course, at Newcastle United. Is he similar to yourself in terms of position and ability? This is where your critic comes in.
Well, he hasn't played for a long time, which has been frustrating for him. No training. The academy side of the football just completely shut down straight away. So not even any training or matches. In this season, he's got into the England squad, and, that's been like very proud for the family to go and watch him play for his country. He enjoys it. He's very, very dedicated. He trains quite regular because he plays for various different age groups. He plays for his own age group, 15s and 16s. He's even made his debut for the under 18s this season as well, which is a great achievement for someone so young. He plays more sort of role I played in my younger days, which was an attacking midfield player or a second striker, number 10. But he's got far more ability than I had at the same age. And, he's very, very athletic. He's got good pace. He's a lot taller than I was. So I'm beginning to ask questions about his real dad, really.
Classic. Oh, God. Jamie Coxon says, does Clarkey remember me gran? Well, I had a picture on the wall of you and me gran when you were on crutches, when your gran was in the same home. Apparently she lived next door to him, his gran in Baker.
I do. I remember that very well. Yeah, that was at the top of Shields Road where me nana was in a old people care home there, and I remember it very well. And they looked after our grandparents and the old people in there really, really well. Good memories.
Yeah, a lot of people asking how much you're getting paid for advertising Sainsbury's. And Des says, Clarkey's food and drink telly programme coming soon.
Maybe if I do something like that, I can forget about the football management. I'm not sure the cooking side of it will be too good, mind. I even burn the toast. I even burn the toast when I make beans on toast.
Jack Bishop says, was Lee disappointed not to play for Sir Bobby at Newcastle?
of course, that would be one thing I would love to have done, and it came quite close. While I was at Fulham, I took a call from John Carver, who was Bobby's number 2, and he said, you know, would I like to come back to the club? And without a doubt, without any second thoughts, I was 100% saying, even though I was enjoying my time at Fulham. And he said, well, I'd been mentioned in a recruitment meeting when they needed a midfield player, and myself had been brought up in that, and Bobby asked John Carver to sound us out. But unfortunately, I think Mick Wadsworth at the time had a strong link with South America, so they went and signed Christian Basidas instead. Doesn't say much for me.
We know how that worked out. Philip Davison says, what did Kevin Keegan say to Lee after he was upset at being taken off at Southampton that time?
Well, without going into all expletives that he used at the end of the game, I mean, during the game when I tried to march down the tunnel at the old Dell there at Southampton, which you remember, the tunnel was in the corner flag area of the stadium. So when I stormed down there and he chased after us and he started smacking me backside like my dad would have when he was telling us off when I was a youngster. And then obviously we went on to lose the game, which we were drawn at the time. And rather than talk about the game and the defeat, he absolutely just tore into us. And when Kevin got upset with you, there was no holding back. So yeah, I had to just take that one on the chin.
John Ball's question there, if you could have signed one of these players in their prime, which would it be, Gazza or Beardsley?
Oh, dear me, what a question that is. See, because I'll give you an example of why it's a tough question, and you'll know this when me and you have done gigs before. And I've always said that if Paul hadn't have picked up that injury in the FA Cup final and went to Lazio 100% fit, he would have went on to become the best player in the world. Likewise, I've always said about Peter, probably the best player to play in a black and white shirt. So when you think of the players that who hasn't got there, oh God, if I could have Paul leading up to that cup final and he wasn't getting injured, and the experience, I would plump for Paul, because as I said, he was on the verge of becoming the best player in the world in that era. And it was only injuries that scuppered that. So probably just slightly, just go for Paul.
Tom Dixon's question, Lee, how many red cards did you have during your career? And what was the worst red card that you had?
Only had one. And that was for Fulham in an FA Cup tie at Grimsby Town. And I hadn't long been recovered from my broken leg at my previous club. Sunderland had only been like 18 months. And a striker called Jack Lester was playing for Grimsby, and he hit us with a naughty tackle. And I think he went for me injury. Well, I thought that way. So I lashed out of him and got a red card. So that was the only time I got a red card.
Yeah. Jack Bart's on. He says, Lee, do us a favour, say up the Pablo. That's his catchphrase.
Up the Pablo.
Yeah, that's it. Job done. Tel Ross says, if I had a team of players that played with Lee's passion and commitment, we would be at the right end of the table all the time. He always gave everything for whatever team he played for, including the SMBs. Not a bad indictment that from a Newcastle fan.
Well, listen, Steve, it's quite simple. When everyone asks us what advice I give to young players, it's just, no matter the situation, no matter how you're feeling, just give your best. You can be having the worst game you've ever had in terms of your passing, or if you're a striker, you're shooting or whatever. But if you're giving your best all the time, no one can ever complain. And that was just the mantra for me. No matter what was going on and how my technical game was going, I just was going to give of my best all the time and run. And sometimes, people would speak to us after the game and say, oh, you had a great game, you done this, didn't. And I thought myself particularly didn't do a lot of good things right, but because I'd worked hard, I'd helped the team get a result.
Yeah. Jack Bishop says, would Gazza have fulfilled the potential if he'd gone to Man United instead of Spurs, in your opinion?
Well, it's a great question because Gaz has responded to this, hasn't he? Because obviously Sir Alex Ferguson is been in the public domain to say that if Paul had joined him, he probably wouldn't have went on to have the issues he's had in later life and after his career finished. And Paul's reply to that in typical Paul Gascoigne humour was, well, what was it? Rio done a runner from a drugs test. Wayne Rooney got caught, doing things with older women. Ryan Giggs got caught doing things with his sister-in-law. Cantona kung fu'd someone in the neck. So that was Paul's typical response to that. But I personally do think, yes, I do think if he had been under the control of Fergie, who's such a disciplinarian and always understands and knows what his players are up to, I think there certainly would have been a lot more discipline put on Paul at a younger age. Would it have helped him in terms of the stuff that he's had to endure after his career? It was always going to be a problem for Paul when he stopped playing football because he loves the game that much. And to take something away that's the majority of your life and your passion, and a real passion, it was always going to be difficult for Paul to be out the way of that. So, it's a difficult one to say. Would Sir Alex having him under his wing as a player for him help him in that way? I think that's a difficult one to answer.
P. Jack 083 says, what happened with Andy Cole at Selhurst Park when you played Wimbledon? I think you might be talking about when he went on the missing list, didn't he? It was that period in time, wasn't it, when we had Wimbledon?
Yeah, I'll tell you the exact story, Steve. Obviously, we've just touched on it before with the incident at Southampton. And so the disciplinary action against me was I got left out of the squad the following Wednesday for the FA Cup tie against Wimbledon at Selhurst Park. And the team went down to meet down to London on the Tuesday. And on the Wednesday morning before the game, they'd done a little light session. And I know Coley was a little bit disappointed in how things had panned out for myself, in that he felt that the disciplinary methods or measures were a bit over the top. I was fine with it. I knew I was out of order, so I took it on the chin. But Coley, he's a very loyal guy. And so he wasn't too pleased. And then in the morning of the session, his body language wasn't the greatest. And I think him and Kevin had a few heated words. And Kevin said, well, if you're not up for the game, you might as well go. And Coley went. And then I got a call from, the two old men of the team, Barry Venison and Paul Bracewell, not long after training, to say the exact words was, your mate's come out on strike with you, so he's not involved in the night. And I was unaware until that call, and they explained what had happened with Coley. So then I knew Coley wasn't going to be involved that night as well. So I think he just felt strongly, more strongly than me. I understood the situation. I understood the implications of what I'd done, but Coley was a bit disappointed in terms of how it had panned out for me.
Greenie91 says, ask Lee what he makes of Viv Solomon.
Viv's a very talented player, a wide man with ridiculous pace, very direct, can make and score goals. He's had experience at first team level now on loan and both at Birmingham as well. So yeah, it was always an exciting player who I had high hopes for when I was at the club.
G. Bo says, Lee, how come you ended up at Sunderland? Just tell the story about how you ended up signing for them, I suppose.
Well, the story is, as I've said many times, 7 or 8 clubs put the offers in that were accepted by Newcastle. Spoke to numerous managers, and the last manager I spoke to was Peter Reid. Met him down in Manchester. And as I went into the meeting in a wine bar in Manchester, I just said, listen, Peter, I've come out with courtesy. This deal won't happen because of me links to Newcastle and being a black and white. 4 or 5 bottles of pink champagne later, I'd signed a 5-year contract. So there's the answer.
Classic. Paulie Bain asks, why did you always put your tongue in your cheek? I think it's a lot of the photographs when you were playing. It always used to catch you like that, didn't it? For whatever reason, it was just something when you were concentrating. Do you think?
I think it was the concentrate. I think I was the 1990s Phil Jones, wasn't I? But thankfully, most of my pictures when I was pulling silly faces, I was doing something good. When Phil Jones is doing these ridiculous faces, like he looks like he's gurning, he's probably making a big mistake. So,
Yeah.
no, I think it's just the concentration levels, I think.
I think so, 100%. Craig Winstanley says, was Lee best mates with Andy Cole at the time that he, and how did he feel when he left? I mean, obviously you were best mates with him when you were at the club, you used to room with him, etc. How did you feel when he left?
Well, your story to go back to is me and Coley knew each other before Andy came to the club. We'd spent a lot of time in the England youth teams together, and, you know, unbelievably, he was a quiet lad from London who was, lad from Nottingham who was based in London, signing for Arsenal, and didn't let a lot of people into his inner circle. But I got really good friends with him. We hit it off straight away. There was a friendship there and a loyalty to each other. So when he signed, I was delighted. And the day he actually left, it was his turn to take me into training because we lived next door to each other. So we used to take turns to drive each other in. And I was sitting, I remember thinking, something's up. I knocked on his door and there was no answer. So I thought, well, I'm not hanging about. I'm not getting a fine for being late for training. I'm getting there on time. So I left it, and I just left loads of messages for Coley. And then, you know, I got a call just before training from Coley to say, listen, he couldn't divulge anything about the deal. It was sworn to secrecy. It was so top secret that no one could know about it. And he was in Manchester completing the deal. And it was tough because you think that's, you know, how are you going to survive with just sort of the hottest striker in the business? His goal ratio for Newcastle was scary. But you always knew with Kevin he'd have something up his sleeve. And he proved that. He brought Les Ferdinand in, and then obviously following that, he brought Alan in. So Kevin always had an answer to these questions, and it was typical of him when obviously the fans were concerned at the time, and there was people outside of St James's Park, if you remember these scenes, some of the fans, and Kevin went out and spoke to them, which was typical Kevin, and he explained the situation, and they trusted him, and he delivered again. Yeah.
Glenn says, who did Lee base his game around, and who were his idols growing up?
I didn't particularly base it around many people, but obviously I grew up in the 80s watching Newcastle, so the 80s team that got promoted with Kevin, Terry McDermott, Peter Beardsley, Chris Waddle, they were the players that I enjoyed watching. Peter became a huge favourite of mine. He was a local player. And then obviously later on in the 80s, Paul came on the scene, Paul Gascoigne, and, you know, played in a similar sort of position, but you knew Paul was a real special talent. So you'd probably say those are the type of players that I grew up admiring and not so much basing your game on, but the players that, you know, that were favourites of mine.
Stephen Renforth says, you look that fit, you could play now. Do you fancy a game under the new owners?
Yeah, if they shorten it to 10 minutes.
Kidder J 1979 says, Lee, have you ever played a game behind closed doors, and how much harder is it for the players mentally?
I've never played a professional game in terms of, you know, a league or a cup match behind closed doors. I've played in a game where there was apparently no away fans meant to be there when we played at Roker Park, but when we just scored goals, there was just these thousands of Geordies jumping up and down how they got in.
I was there.
That was absolutely crazy. It was mad, and so that was when we weren't meant to have any fans in the away game. But I could imagine it being really difficult. I could imagine. I mean, I bet there's some players who love it, because there's players who train Monday to Friday and are sensational players, unbelievably talented players. But when it comes out onto a match day in front of the thousands of people who are in the crowd, they find it quite difficult, intimidating, and they go into that shell a little bit. So I think you could see some players, if we watch these games closely, who haven't been that impressive in the past, could come to the fore because they don't feel the pressure then, because if fans, you know, making decisions on them, or giving them a little bit of stick when they've made a mistake. So I personally wouldn't like it because I love the raw emotion of the game, and I love the huge part the fans play in it.
Yeah. Tall Paul says, do you think you should have left Newcastle earlier?
No, not at all. You know, I left the season after we should have won the league. I stayed another season and we finished second again. No, I give myself every opportunity. You know, sometimes I even regret maybe I left too early. So no, I certainly don't think I should have left even earlier than I did. Without a doubt, because if you remember, once I left, the 2 seasons after that, I think the club finished mid-table, 12th or 13th, and the quality of players that had been brought in after that were nowhere near the standard that had previously been there. So, no, definitely not. If anything, probably left too early, actually, when I did.
Dan Davis' question here is a good one. Shearer, Aguero, and Henry, Henry, sorry. Start one, bench one, and sell one. If Lee Ryder's watching and you don't see a Shearer at the start, you guarantee it'll be back page of the Chronicle tomorrow.
No, it's got to be because I played with him. Shearer started. Bench Aguero and sell Henry, because I think Henry wouldn't want to be a sub and he'd be a little bit of a tough guy to keep happy if he was on the bench. So the money I'd make off Henry, I'd have to reinvest in the team. Perfectly
swerved. P. Jacko says, how good was Rob Lee and did you enjoy playing with him?
Great, fantastic player. You know, when there's a player who can change his role in the team as impressively as Rob did from a right winger, and especially from a winger, from going from a winger into a central midfield position, the roles are so different and the requirements are so different. And Rob just was outstanding at both. And I really, hey, listen, I've said it all a while. It's easier to play with top players, and when you've got people like him and you're playing alongside someone like him, they make the game very, very easy for yourself. So I love playing alongside him, and he was top quality, and a real good lad as well. We got on well off the pitch also. Whenever I see him, still we still have a close tight bond. So nothing but admiration for Rob. Apart from when it comes to buying the drinks, he could drop his shoulder like he was playing on the wing when it was his round.
Sean Toon says, did Lee watch Sunderland Till I Die, and what did he think of it?
I did. I watched both series, and I'm very concerned about the club after watching the last one. I think there's huge financial issues bubbling away, and they're never going to be rectified by competing in League One. So, you know, it looks that League One probably will follow the same example as League Two. And Sunderland won't even, I don't even think they're in a playoff position at the moment. So
they won't go up. There's been a lot more stuff released this week about their finances.
Yeah, for them to spend another season in League One and the money that they're outlaying, Steve, to try and get out of that league in terms of salaries and running costs of that football club. I mean, it's a fantastic training ground they've got, but it won't be cheap to run that facility, everything that goes with it. And I've seen something that the loans that the current owner has, he can charge up to 9% interest on them. You know, in today's world, you know, when you're looking, you're not even be paying, you know, 0.05% interest on it, something like that. So it doesn't look good for them at the moment, I've got to say, and spending what will be the third season in League One.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of you don't earn a lot of income when you're competing at that level. To be honest with you, you know, in terms of the difference between the Championship and the Premier League, you don't earn a lot of money in the Championship. But certainly when you get to League One, it's very. It'll probably be costing Sunderland more than what they're making in League One, and for them to have to spend another year at least at that level, you've got to be concerned for the future for them.
Cribs 747 says, who's the best player that you played with that didn't make it?
Probably a lad who was my era, my age group, a lad called Tommy Herron, who was in the Newcastle United youth team with us. Magnificent left foot, like most left-footed players. Very, very elegant. Tommy was a terrific footballer, maker and scorer of goals. Didn't go his way as an apprentice in terms of getting a professional deal. And then obviously, you know, the knockbacks that he received just didn't go his way and didn't really pursue a football career for that long after he got released. So he's probably the one in terms of the talent that slipped by the wayside.
Yeah, Stephen Renforth saying, hi lads, do you see Gaza around? If so, how's he doing? I spoke to Paul this week. In fact, I had a FaceTime call with him. He's okay. He's coping all right, as Paul always does. That's all I'm going to say. It was a mad phone call, put it that way. There's two phone calls you know are going to be entertaining. It's either and that's Tino and Paul Gascoigne, and it depends what they're doing and where they are and who the supporting cats are behind them. But to be honest, it was good. I'm happy that he's okay and he looks well anyway, which is the main thing.
I tell you what, Steve, imagine them two as a combination.
God, that was Keith Gillespie's choice for a dinner party.
Different class. Class.
100% different class. Talking about Keith Gillespie, Marky Deva says, who was better, Scott Sellers or Keith Gillespie?
Completely different players. Keith was very, very quick and direct. Wanted the ball played over the top of fullback so he'd get into a race with him and probably would cross with one or two touches. Scott was, like I've just mentioned, a real. All these left-footed players seem to be elegant, look lovely on the eye, and he had a great, balance, great composure, without being really quick, but could pass around players, could play 1-2s, had a great passing range, way to pass, could, put it through the eye of a needle. And obviously was very, very good on set players, as we all know. So difficult to compare the two of them because that strengths was completely different to each other and would give you great balance on either side. They both were terrific players in their own right.
Kurt Beresford says, thank you so much for your commitment to us Blues, meaning Birmingham City. He says, you're the most underappreciated manager we've had in recent years. What do you remember of Damari Gray?
Oh, an exciting talent. I mean, he was a player who went from the youth team and probably only played about 4 under-21 games before then put him in the first team, give him his debut against Stoke City in the League Cup. In a game that we come back from 4-1 down to draw 4s each and then eventually lose on penalties against Stoke, who were Premier League team then. And he was outstanding on the night. He made 2 of the goals. And I knew then, he was only 16, he had the temperament to play in first team football, and he never left the first team environment then while I was the manager. So I knew there was a very, very exciting young player there. And then obviously, and what he done, Damari, he had good people around him. His family were good because he had lots of opportunities early in his career to move to clubs, and he could have moved quite quickly, say with the example of having 10 or 20 first team games under his belt, and he could have went to numerous Premier League clubs and probably went in their under 23 team, but he didn't. He stayed at Birmingham and he ended up moving after playing about 150 games. So when he moved to Leicester, he didn't go anywhere near their under 23s. He went straight into their first team squad because he'd stayed loyal to Birmingham. He stayed patient. He wanted to get the experience of first team championship football under his belt rather than just dive into the first opportunity. And then what happened was he bypassed under 23 football, because I see players who play in the championship at a high level first team do really well. They go to a Premier League club and they go into their under 23s. Well, I think that's defeating the object. When you've got into someone's first team, when you're going to move and clubs think you're worthy of going to the Premier League, don't go to a Premier League club to then go and play in under 23 football. You bypass that then. And Damari done it right, and he's such a great kid as well. Still keep in touch with him, and he makes us proud when I see what he achieves in the game.
Crow Daly's another Blue. He says, which was the player that you tried to sign for the Blues, but it didn't go through? Was there anybody who you tried to sign for Birmingham, but it didn't go through?
Oh yeah, I mean, there was a fair few. I mean, it's difficult to say because there's 5 or 6 that you're thinking about. You know, Malouda from Chelsea. We tried to do him, and that got very close, and then it just went by the wayside. I mean, it was tough because I didn't have the finances to try and compete. Andy Carroll was one that I tried to sign early in my career on loan, you know, because I knew him as a young striker from Newcastle, and I nearly got a deal. When Kevin Keegan was back there second time, I nearly got a deal done when I was trying to get him back. But that wasn't at Birmingham, that was at Huddersfield. But I just, I wasn't really in the market for players where, you know, I was competing with other ones. I had to delve a little bit lower. I had to go into the lower leagues and stuff like that. You know, when I first went in, I had a wish list of players, but then it quickly became apparent that I was never in the market for those players in terms of the finances.
Yeah. Borough Mag says, favourite St James's Park, the one that when you were a boy, which obviously would be the old ground with the old West Stand, the corrugated iron West Stand, the Sir John Hall Stand, or the Sir John Hall era when it was being built up, or the one now, which was the best? Which was your favourite?
I love it now. It's a fantastic arena. I love the place now. I mean, you know, I never forget when I went in the 80s and I was in the Gallagher end and sitting on one of the concrete bollards because I was too small to see if I stood up. And then in the paddock, and then obviously as I played and the ground was getting more and more developed. And then when I came back in 2005, the way the ground was and the atmosphere, the way it is now is second to none. You've got to keep building, like I keep saying to you about the infrastructure of the club. We've got to keep going into the 21st century, and the stadiums like that. It's a magnificent arena, and I love the way it is.
Buster Medine says, 1 year ago you were dancing round a pool in Marbella. Have your dance moves got any better, or are you still very stiff? There's
some of my ex-players coming on and giving us a bit of stick, eh? Oh man,
I've seen some of Gary's moves as well. By the way,
I've never been renowned for me dancing or me singing, to be honest with you.
Good to hear from you, mate. NUFC Fire and Skill says, who had the best hairstyle? Was it you, Lee, Peter Beardsley, or Barry Venison?
Oh, come on. There's only one winner. Peter. No, gotta be me. Definitely.
It inspired a generation, mate. It inspired a generation.
It did. It was safety first.
Safety first. It's the cleanest haircut I've ever had, mate. Des6761 says, will your son stay at Newcastle when the takeover goes through?
Yeah. Listen, he's happy. I think he's as I said, he's got his foot on the first rung of a very long ladder. It's a lot more for him to do and achieve for whatever he wants to do. It'll always be his decision, whether he's, you know, wherever he goes in his football career. We'll stand by him and back him and be loyal to him as a family and give him advice, but it'll always be down to him. It's be no one from us pushing him and telling him what to do. If he's, you know, feels it's worthwhile going somewhere else, or he wants to stay in, you know, in be at Newcastle. Listen, be nothing more prouder than me if he could do it. And it's a big if at this moment, but if he could ever become a first team player at Newcastle, you know, there's not many people, you know, not many fathers can say that, you know, who are lucky enough to be a player themselves and then their sons follow in their footsteps. So, of course, that would be proud, but the decision will always be his at the end of the day.
Gleno 1987 says, what does Lee make of our current centre midfielders at the club?
Yeah, listen, I've always been a fan of Shelby. I think that he has the ability and the talent to be a different type of player in terms of opening the game up. His passing range is terrific. I just felt we didn't have the type of strikers that he was looking for sometimes when he plays them longer, like type quarterback passes over the top. You know, but I think the extra responsibility he's been given this year, you know, has helped him, because he does let himself down and the team down at times with his lack of discipline. You know, there's certain times I think where Rafa felt he couldn't trust him because he made some stupid decisions. You know, the example, the one down at Nottingham Forest, and he gets a stupid red card. You know, it wasn't a red card over him being committed to a tackle as well. It was just him lashing out at someone, you know. And when you're a manager and you have players who do that, you lose a little bit of trust in those players, because it's hard enough to win a football match 11v11. And when you're down to 10 men, it becomes even harder. So I think there's a talent there without a shadow of a doubt. Hayden is a very, very committed footballer. I like his attitude, always gives everything. He's scored some important goals. And obviously you've got the Longstaff brothers who are supremely talented young men, but at the start of their careers. And, you know, I think we're hearing a little bit too much about contracts and are they going to sign, are they not going to sign very early in their careers. What they need to do is just get down to get back to playing football again and being the main men on the pitch, and the rest of that all takes care of itself. So, but I think if you want to be competitive, where potentially the new owners could take the club, I think every position and every person who plays all over the pitch for the club, their positions will be under threat because of the standards that where they want to get to and how quickly they want to do it.
4-0 to Newcastle now. Alan Shearer's just got a hat-trick. So we're just getting updates on this game. A lot of people watching this and also watching that game. There's a lot of people saying as well, Alan Barber Stone, your barber, who has been commenting on your hair as usual, says you haven't used the clippers yet. Says, to be fair, Nash and Steve, besides, it was funny at first about Sunderland, but looking at it now, it is really quite sad. A few people saying they should just knock the stadium down and build a Sainsbury's on there. It would be handy for you, Lee, for your wine. Tom Dixon says, Lee, did you ever wind players up during the derby games? Were you the kind of person who used to get a bit of sledging, a bit of banter on the pitch?
No, it's not really my game, that, to be honest. The only time I've ever done it was a couple of times with Robbie Savage, because was not someone like I particularly got on with, or, you know, I thought he'd become like he was more like well known for his antics on the pitch than what he actually done on the pitch, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You know, so he's a bit of a wind-up merchant, and so you'd always used to just try and shoot him down. So, and that wasn't really my game, that, to be honest with you. It was just me focusing on my job, really.
Yeah. Gaz687 says, does Lee think Jamal Lascelles is the correct person to take the team forward as captain?
Well, listen, what I'll say is he's certainly got great leadership qualities. He seems to, even from a young player, never been frightened to, you know, express his opinion, even when he was a young player and when he first come to the club, even though he was new. And I like that. If you've got an opinion, you know, get it out there, then try and back it up and have a debate. And then also sometimes admit that you might be wrong, because you're not going to be right every time. In terms of the footballing side, is he going to be good enough once, you know, when you're getting linked with the likes of Koulibaly from Napoli and people like that? Are you going to be at that type of level? That's when they have to come to the fours. Players, are they up for the challenge? Can they rise to the challenge? Can playing with these better players make them better? Which is, I always felt it improved me so much, because if you're playing with a better standard of player, it makes you better. And are they ready to fight that challenge head on? If they haven't got the stomach for the fight, when these better players come alongside them and they want to throw the towel in quickly, that's the problem. So that'll always be down to Jamal, how far he can go. But in terms of his own personal leadership skills, I certainly think he's got that. because he showed that from such a young age, and he's been involved in a club that's not been an easy one to captain for a few years, and and certainly get the team together in terms of the atmosphere around the club, because it's been quite tense between the supporters and the ownership, and that can go out onto the pitch, and he seems to have got the players quite focused and doing their jobs alongside the managers, of course, Steve and Rafa before him. So yeah, I think as personally as his leadership skills, he's got that. It's whether in terms of the quality side, is he going to be up for the fight if and when the takeover happens? These quality players and fellow centre halves will be coming into the club.
Yeah, D. Young was asking something about a 50p taxi ride in London. I'm not sure what that was. Do you know anything about that?
I just seen that. A 50p taxi ride in London probably gets you about 2 foot from your door. So, I don't know. We might need some more information on there.
Blackster says, ask Lee to grow his hair until the takeover goes through. He might look like Barry Venison.
And then I'll need the red leather cowboy boots, and then the red leather waistcoat as well to go with their blonde locks.
Des asks, would Lee take an under-23 role at Newcastle, or if he got offered? I'm sure you would consider something at Newcastle if you got offered, wouldn't you?
Listen, there's been possibilities of that in the past. Just didn't feel it was the right thing to do. As I've said, it has to be a real big challenge and positive challenge for us if I was to go and work at that level in terms of the youth, because it's still part of the academy umbrella, the under-23s.
Yeah.
So, in the future, under new ownership, possible. But certainly at this moment in time, not something that would be of interest to us.
Yeah, a lot of people asking if I would get Gaza on. I mean, to be honest, guys, it might just happen one day. I'm not going to try and book him in, because if I do, it'll end up in disappointment. He'll not come on. So one day it might just go live, and we might go live with Gaza. We'll see what happens. I have asked him. But we'll wait and see. A lot of people asking about Andy Cole as well. I mean, I don't have contact with him, Lee. I know you've got contact with him. A lot of people concerned about him as well, saying, hope he's okay and wish him well. So maybe that's a conversation you can have. I'd be only too happy to do something with him if he's up for it,
Yeah, I'll pass on that message, Steve. I'll pass on all the best wishes of the fans. I spoke to him last week. Obviously, he has the kidney issue. He's had the transplant. Yeah. It's been successful, but not 100%. So he still has that. He's in lockdown on his own at the moment, down in London. And he's obviously, the mental health side of that as well. So yeah, I'd seen he'd done a bit of press work last week and was talking about that. So I gave him a quick call to make sure everything was all right. He on the day I spoke to him, he's in good spirits. But as he said, I know him. He just keep fighting it. So, and he will. It just shows you, doesn't it? What he achieved in his career and the life he had and has, and how successful he was and adored by everywhere, the fans everywhere he went, and the success he had in his career. It can happen to anyone, but he'll certainly be delighted to hear a lot of the Newcastle fans wishing him the best, because even though it was a short period and it was tainted with a little bit of controversy after one of the cup finals with a derogatory singing, I think, he loved the place, and whenever he comes back, he really enjoys being back, and he loves the fact that he had a real successful time here.
Yeah, top class. Lee, been great as ever. We'll catch you again next Saturday. Take care, mate, and look forward to speaking to you then. Have a good week.
Stay safe, everyone. Cheers, Steve.
Take care, pal. Bye-bye.